For me, this project was so much less about them being a hospice patient. It was much more about them being a human being undergoing this major sort of existential point in time.
Man, am I a sucker for an accent and existential meaning. That's Claudia Biçen, a San Francisco-based artist who spent 2 years working on a project called Thoughts in Passing. It's a series of drawn portraits, accompanied by 3-minute audio clips of people in hospice who were told that they had 6 months or less to live.
But at the time, I certainly thought that there had to be something extremely powerful about being confronted with your death. And I believed that people were going to give me insight into what their meaning of life was, because it was a period of time when they would be reflecting a lot on what had happened and also reflecting a lot on how to spend their last few days or weeks or months.
So it sounds like you had a clear vision of what you wanted to capture.
I had a clear vision of the theme. I had no idea what I was going to capture, but I knew that I wanted to deeply understand people's experience of confronting their mortality, and I didn't know what that was going to look like. But I knew that they needed to go there with that conversation for the project to make sense.
In part 1 of Thoughts in Passing, we heard the interviews of 5 people in hospice, along with the verbal sketch from Claudia and her motivation for creating the project. In part 2, we will hear the interviews of the remaining 4 subjects and the insights Claudia learned from the experience. Grab some more tissue, and please join me for episode 7 of the Adventures of Memento Mori, part 2 of Thoughts in Passing.
From the Maida Creative Company, this is the Adventures of Memento Mori, a seeker's guide for learning to live by remembering to die. The podcast that explores mortality. Here's your host, D.S. Moss.
Just from listening to the clips of the 9 subjects, you can discern shared themes. I wish I hadn't worked as much was one that stood out to me. But since Claudia spent so much time with each of them, I asked her what she thought was common among them all.
So the main thing that people wanted to talk with me about was the ways in which they had created things in the world, the ways in which they had connected with the world, the ways in which they had participated in the world.
She went on to tell me that what nobody wanted to talk about was the things that they had accumulated, the money they had made, the status that they had achieved, anything to do with the acquisition into self.
That makes sense, right? Because this idea of consumption and acquiring stuff into yourself is like literally the opposite of creation. And this is something I've really struggled with, because I think in our society we're so fixated on consumption. Our deepest value is consumption and our ability to consume. Like people's status is ordered in terms of how much they can consume.
Yet there she was, speaking to all these people on their deathbed. No one cared. No one cared what they had consumed.
So I also interviewed a man called Bert. Bert really affected me because I would go, after I would meet with him, I would go to the beach or I would go on a walk. He took me back to a place of really slowing down and having gratitude.
You drive hard to get yourself ahead, and you want to be better than everybody else when you're young. And the more you live, the more you find that that's not as important as you think. The fact is, as you get older, you don't compete as much. You don't have to compete as much. Now, aging is no fun. You lose a lot, and you lose people, you lose your health. But again, you gain otherwise. You find that you have more time to look around, see life, see how beautiful it is, see a tree as it really is. And the same even with human beings. I feel a draw to them much more, and I feel I can identify with them a little better, because I know a little better now. The closeness of human beings to one another and the beauty of it all. is something that's been fairly new with me. I had a very great deal of difficulty with my parents, and I couldn't stand the fact of being around my family. I felt something was wrong, but I couldn't lay my finger on it. And when I finally had the stroke, I saw exactly what happened, that he raped me when I was 4 years old. I always thought something was wrong with me. I couldn't put my finger on it. And then suddenly I saw what happened to me, and I understood the pain that I went through. And it made me feel so much more relieved, tremendous relief. I started to live more intensely. This happened when I was 72. That doesn't give me much years. I'm sick as a dog, I know that, and I try my best to forget that. But the feeling of giving up life now is very hard because it's too beautiful. I find myself becoming part of that beauty. It's in me. I don't believe I am that important anymore, but I'm part of the whole.
And there he was in his hospital bed, and all he had was this window with a tree outside, and this tree became the most beautiful thing, and he underwent this sort of deep identification with the tree and with everything around him. Aura, I met much later. Aura just died a couple of months ago. She was, I think, 99 years old when she died. She had a tough life as a kid, and a huge family, lived with like 3 or 4 generations of her family who just were really supportive through this project. And she was a powerhouse.
My name is Aura L. Taiske Smith. My birth date, 1916. And you figure out how old I am. I have nothing to hide. My life story, I can't tell it all. I was born and reared in Texas. I grew up on a farm. I'm not ashamed. Raised most of our food. I never went hungry a day in my life, but I had to work. I'm not ashamed. I grew up in a community of people who loved each other. Whoever had something the other needed, we shared what we had. We didn't care whether they pay it back or bring it back or anything. I accept what God has given me. I'm not a rich person. He didn't say I would be rich. I accept what I have worked for, and I'm satisfied. I realize that we didn't come here to stay. We just passing through. One day I'm going just like my mama did. I know the hospital sent me home to die. I know that. They just gave me medicine that to ease the pain, not to cure the pain, but to ease the pain. I can't live the day for tomorrow. I have to live this day. And whatever happened tomorrow, you don't worry about. You find yourself worrying about tomorrow. You know, tomorrow is not promised. I don't have any fear. When God gets ready for me, He gonna take me, regardless of what they do, what kind of treatment I'm getting. He will take me. You go through some scary moments. You go through a rough edge. Sometimes you get to the center. You just keep moving. Just like you going up a hill. You don't stop because you're tired. You don't go as fast. Sometimes you're almost level to the ground. You be so low in life. But you keep climbing. Don't give up.
She just, every step of the way through her life, she just was committed to, she talks about it, climbing this mountain, never give up, never give up. And she was very inspirational.
And that leads me to the ultimate question. Did spending time with those who were dying inspire Claudia to live her life differently? She tells us after this.
Hello, fellow provocateurs who believe death is a topic worth talking about. We need your help spreading the word. Be the slightly odd yet endlessly fascinating conversationalist at your next party and tell your friends about the Adventures of Memento Mori. Want to stay in the loop? Join our inner circle by going to our site, theadventuresofmementomori.com, and be sure to stay up to date with the quest for enlightenment on YouTube by following our channel, The Adventures of Memento Mori podcast. And now, back to the show.
We're back with Claudia Biçen talking about her Thoughts in Passing portrait series, which you can experience on our site, remembertodie.com, or the project site, thoughtsinpassing.com.
Which, by the way, just talking about the art of it, you get so just taken by the story and the audio, and they work so well together. The art is so good that it's understated. And I mean that as like an amazing compliment, because you've done such a great job of capturing the soul of a person and then doing it in a way that touches and tells a greater story. It's strange. It struck me is that you don't think of it as a drawn picture of somebody. You think of it as a person.
That's great. That's like the highest compliment someone could give me. So thank you.
Yeah.
Judith, I met in Zen hospice, actually. And the most difficult thing about working with her is that she had lost her husband several years before. They both had brain cancer. And she was leaving her 20-something-year-old son behind with no parents. And that was the biggest struggle. And you can't help but think about your own mother.
I remember the time when I was about 4 years old. I wondered where all the people who died really went. And I remember asking people about it, and nobody seemed to know. Just like that, nobody knew. I wanted to live doing a lot of different things. Of course, I wanted to love people, both men and women, just loving them as a person. And I always wanted to have children. I never really was afraid of dying when I was the only one who had a brain tumor, because I wasn't afraid. I just thought Jamie was here. And then was just about a year had passed, and then Jamie woke up one morning and he said, I'm very sick. Would you please call an ambulance? So we had 2 craniotomies and 2 brain tumors within a year. And Jamie died 14 months after his diagnosis. And he died like a scientist would die. He wanted to be in every experiment. That was totally up to him. But I've seen with my whole family that they're the same way. Always looking for a cure. And I said, I'm in hospice because I'm dying. I mean, people are born and people die. That's part of life. But we don't deal with it. We don't talk about it. It gets better after you talk about it for a long time. I mean, it isn't something you talk about for a minute and get. I think Michael, my son, and I are still dealing with leaving each other. And we're in the throes of that. And it's rough to look at your son, who's in his 20s, and say, I won't see my grandkids. I won't see your guitar playing. And I won't see which field you go in, which, of course, is going to be great. And I feel now that I've lived about as long as I can live. There's a few things that's ending too short. But if I really look back and think about everything, I'm very happy about my life.
So the last person I interviewed was a man named Osamu. And he was born to a Japanese immigrant family. He grew up here in California. And he deeply denied dying and being sick. It was funny to the point where I think I believed him.
I'm not convinced that I'm sick. I don't go there.
I just deny it. So I'm treating this as just a deterrent that I can grow out of. I don't think about death and dying as much as have I provided for the family as much as I can. But it's tough in this world, especially when you're a minority. We were born of an immigrant family, barely making it. Because I was an Asian in a very white community, and in this life that we have right now, the easiest way is to be the right color, right education. We were the lost part of the population. I didn't know what the world was, and I wish I was better educated toward what my possibilities were. I wanted to go into architecture, but my background, everything, was short of following that as a true educational development. So I gave that up and went into someplace where I could be used as a worker rather than a creator. Everything is work first, pleasure after if there's time. I felt that I should help the family out as much as I can economically. I don't believe I missed too many deadlines. We were probably close to 100%. When you try and work and get ahead, you give up time. Leave just very, very few hours in a week to enjoy people, education, religion. I wish I can back off on how much work I did. I try to go back, make a more creative mind so I can fully enjoy what's available. There's so much the world has to offer. I just barely skimmed it.
I think I believed that maybe he wasn't sick, and he just died a week ago. So it was a weird thing to hear. You come to believe what people tell you, even though you know that they're in hospice, so everybody else knows that they're dying.
You spent time with these 9 people and you grew close to them. What insights, what cliff notes of life did you take away from it?
So there are two really big themes that were present throughout the whole project that I have not been able to really stop thinking about.
And you'll hear them after this. But before we cut to Ruthie asking you to buy something or donate, I'd like to ask you for your help in passing the podcast along to your friends and family. The more ears, the better. Now here's Ruthie.
Do you consider yourself to be a fellow seeker? Do you believe there's something more to being human than what's available in the illusory cocoon of our material world? Or perhaps you're thinking of starting an existential scavenger hunt and would like a guidebook to help chart your path? If yes, you're in luck. Go to theadventuresofmementomori.com and sign up to receive D.S. Moss's upcoming book, Something to Believe in, a seeker's guide to finding your big belief. Sign up today and start your journey.
Before the break, you were donating and forwarding along the podcast, and Claudia was about to tell us the 2 big themes she took away from the project.
The first thing really is concerned with what constitutes a meaningful life. And, I always used to think that we find meaning, in life, and that's it. It's like this thing that exists out there in the world that we just have to find our meaning. And I don't believe that anymore at all. And I think I didn't believe that really before this project started. I think that meaning is something that we create and we construct. But if you take that to be true, then this question becomes of, okay, but how do we create meaning? And that's something that my subjects really gave me a lot of insight into.
This is actually the 4th episode in a row where a guest's experience with death had changed their view of meaning. And I guess mine too a little bit. As though meaning were a proper noun. Kind of like the idea of purpose. Life, my life certainly, must have a meaning. But maybe it doesn't. And if I get to ultimately define it, then thank fucking God. Now that feels a little bit enlightening. Anyway, here's the other thing.
And the other thing, I went into this project wanting to learn about how to live and presuming that people would undergo some fundamental transformative experience, that people on their deathbed were going to embody a wisdom that I couldn't have by virtue of like not being in their situation. And I think what I found instead was that there is mainly no revelation. There is no like grand metamorphosis of being, and there is no linear progression in life. We're not on this upward progression towards some ideal state. And that was also something I really struggled with in this project. I would come home at the end of the interviews and be like, I just think we just die as ourselves. And it was a difficult thing to process at first, but then I found that actually it became quite freeing. So if you can build in this idea into your life that actually you're not on this upward progression, you're not actually going anywhere, you're on this sort of up and down wave until it's just terminated one day.
Just stops.
Just stops. It was never going up. It was never going up.
And on that happy note, but actually, here's one more thought from Claudia.
But what that does is it opens up this small gap of freedom to say to yourself, okay, I can't live my life in terms of what I could be or what I should be. Like, there is just what I am. Like, the person I am now is the only person I'm ever gonna be. I'm gonna die as this person, and at best I can sit with that and I can face myself and I can confront myself. And maybe, if I'm really lucky, I can learn to love myself too.
Enlightenment sounds much, much better with an accent. Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Adventures of Memento Mori. Huge thanks to Claudia Biçen for sharing her project and her thoughts. Please go to our website, remembertodie.com, to watch and to learn more about Thoughts in Passing. Or go to the site's project page, thoughtsinpassing.com. Remember to follow us on the social media at remembertodie. I am DS Moss, back in 2 weeks for more Adventures of Memento Mori.
The episode was produced by Josh Heilbrenner, DS Moss, and Hannah Beale. Theme music composed by Mikey Ballou. This has been a production of the Maida Creative Company. Until next time, keep seeking.